Hello friends, and welcome to the channel. I'm Nick, and this is MSFS Flight Plans, a place for simmers, explorers, flyers, and perhaps feeling the most warm and cozy in a place like this is pretty much anyone who's at one time or another wondered if you might just have a little touch of nerd in you. If you like this kind of stuff, well, yeah. And it's okay. You'll fit right in around here. So we've got another member hometown flyover today. This one is dedicated to our man, Mike Coffey, who has been around since almost the very beginning and has just been so great and so supportive of this channel as we've come along. So Mike, sorry it took me so long to get out here, but now we're doing it. We are in Vancouver, British Columbia, just across the northwestern border of the United States along the Pacific. And we're flying the 182, and I'll tell you why I selected this plane. I don't think we've done a flight in this one yet, but it had autopilot, and it's not real performance heavy, which is great for reasons I'll explain in a bit. As far as add-ons go, I do have an add-on for this airport. I'll tell you where we are here in just a second. And I've included in the video description a couple of other add-ons for some other airports, none of which I have installed for the aforementioned performance issues. But if you want to take off from any of the other places, or if you have a machine that can handle them just looking nice as you're flying over, those will be in the video description. I also have two Payware add-ons installed. Let me go ahead and start the plane while I'm sitting here talking about all this stuff. I've got the RKBRIDGER pack for Vancouver, and anytime we're ever flying over any place that RKBRIDGER has done, I always get his packs because I'm a big bridge nerd, and they look pretty bad out here. There's one or two that have been done up as actual, mods add-ons for Flight Sim, MSFS, and they look pretty good. The rest of them looked really bad. So that cleaned all that up, touched up some of the shorelines, and then I have the SAMSCENE pack for Vancouver as well, which cleaned up a lot of the buildings downtown. Everything out here is photogrammetry, but some of the buildings don't look great in the default. So the ones that we really want to take a good look at are all going to look much better now. All right, so let's get our landing lights on. One notch of flaps in. We're going to be cruising at 2,200 feet today, which is going to be just great. You can see there's mountains all around us here, but we won't be flying over any of them, so that's not going to be a problem. Parking brake off, and let's do this. So this airport that we're leaving from is Fort Langley, Charlie Bravo, Quebec 2. And I do have the add-on installed for this one. And there's lots of freeware add-ons for the city of Vancouver as well. I didn't think any of them were all that great compared to what SAMSCENE had done, so that's the one that I went with. And it's going to look pretty good. Some of the outskirt areas where they didn't touch up, you'll see what I was talking about with the photogrammetry. But downtown's going to look good. And the weather setting, I was trying to get it to look like what it does in Vancouver if you're looking down from the sky this time of year. They've got a lot of evergreens, but they don't have a lot of these brown, orangish trees. I just couldn't find anything that looked quite right. And I had to turn the live weather off, flaps up, trim down a little bit, because it's usually very cloudy and very rainy out here, and on all my test flights it looked just like that. So if we wanted to see everything without being obscured by clouds or shadows, I had to use the few cloud setting. All right, once we get up to 400 feet, I will turn the autopilot on, and away we'll go. I'll start telling you about all this stuff going on out here. And there we are. All right, that's on. Vertical speed. We'll do 500 feet a minute. My favorite vertical speed setting. All right, how's everything look? We'll go ahead and turn our landing lights off. Everything else looks pretty good. And I feel like I'm riding a little bit high in this plane. If you look out the window, I just don't feel like I should be sitting that high. But if we go down too much, I mean, you can see the glare shield goes way up there, so we would have trouble seeing anything out in front of us. And judging by the headrest, we look to be in about the right spot, but you never know if those are lined up correctly or not. Alright, so as we get turned around here, we're going to head the other direction, towards the west, down the Fraser River. We'll get another look at Fort Langley, so I'll tell you a little bit about that while we get ourselves situated. And you can see the texturing of the fields looks great. Most of the buildings look great. These are flat here, whatever they got, all these junked cars out here or whatever are flat. But a lot of them, once we get downtown by the shoreline, will have elevation. It'll all look really good. And I thought about adding a little snow out here, but they really don't get much snow in Vancouver because it's so close to the water. I read they get about 30 centimeters of snow a year. And the average low during the winter is in the mid-40s. Doesn't even get to freezing all that often. But in the summer times, it only gets up to the mid-60s, so pretty narrow range of temperatures out here. And I can't even imagine how cold the ocean water is, considering how cold it is down in Southern California. So Fort Langley was established in 1827, named after a guy called Thomas Langley, a director of the Hudson's Bay Company, which I'll mention a lot, so from here on out I'm just going to call it the HBC. Alright, let's pull our RPMs back and throttle back just a little bit, and we'll go ahead and pull our mixture back a little bit too. And the HBC was founded as a fur trading business in 1670, making it the oldest and at one time the largest company in Canada. And it still exists today, but they're not in the fur business anymore. I think they're a majority shareholder in Saks, some big retail stores. And there was once a real fort out here, so here's our airport, here's Fort Langley, and I think there's a town called Langley somewhere out here. And the fort was built by the HBC when negotiations about the future border between the US and Canada made them wonder if their headquarters, which was another stronghold called Fort Vancouver, might wind up in American hands. And it turns out that was a justified concern because it did. And you can now tour a replica of Fort Vancouver down in the town of Vancouver, but not this one. It's about 200 miles to the south along the Columbia River in Vancouver, Washington. So having this backup location would at least assure they would maintain control of the Fraser up here, which was another big trading route. This island right here is called McMillan Island, named after James McMillan, also of the HBC, and he was the guy that founded Fort Langley. And today this island is split between parks, campgrounds, and a reservation for the Kwantlen First Nation tribe, which owns a couple of dozen houses just down this little area right here. Or maybe they're over here. And there are a lot of tribes out here, none of which I'd ever heard of. You know, we always hear about the ones in the Midwest and the South, but there were a lot of different tribes living real close to each other up here. I'll tell you about some more of them as we go along. And in just a second, we're going to see the Golden Ears Bridge right up here, crossing the Fraser, which looks phenomenal. And that might have been... It looked okay default-wise, but when I added the RKBRIDGER pack, you could see all the cables. So you could see the pylons coming up on the sides here, but you couldn't see all the cables. And if you like bridges as much as I do, and if you've never gotten an RKBRIDGER pack, who, by the way, pays me nothing to rejoice about his name, his detailing is just... You can get as close as you want. It's super, super detailed. Just amazing. I keep trying to get him to do one in Jacksonville, because... all the bridges here are so bad that we're never going to do a flyover unless somebody cleans that stuff up. But this place was called the Golden Ears not for its extraordinary sense of hearing, but after a couple of big peaks up on Mount Blanchard about 10 miles north of us, and they named a lot of their bridges after mountains up here. But it's a 6-vehicle lane bridge with a sectioned off area for pedestrians, and that was opened in 2009 to replace a ferry route they had down there. And that baby's a little over 3,000 feet long. See, all this looks real nice out here. Real nice. It's not till we get to some of the skyscrapers, the closer ones, not the big ones downtown. Those will look better, but the closer ones are going to have the blurring typical of an untouched up photogrammetry job. That looks good, doesn't it? Real nice. This island here is called Barnston, and you'll still need to take a ferry to that one if you want to get out there. And that place was named after an HBC clerk who worked with James McMillan, the guy who founded Fort Langley. And I have no doubt that there's probably an island somewhere out here named after one of the janitors of the HBC, because everyone got a slice of the island pie. And as you can see, that place is mostly farms today, but that little square of trees right here belongs to the Katzie First Nation, another tribe, with a population of around 50 or so on that reservation. And it appears one of the requisites to live anywhere on that island is filling your yard with wrecked cars and boats. You'll see what I mean when we check out the satellite image at the end, because all of the yards have a bunch of wrecked cars and boats in them. So this airport right here, which we're flying just to the, I guess, well, it's on our left, so we're flying to the right of it. It's called PittMeadows. And there is a freeware add-on available for that, although it looks pretty good as it is, and I included that in the description, though it's not included in this flight. And if you can believe it, in the early 1970s, that was the busiest airport in all of Canada. And even today, it's the 9th busiest. And apparently it's a big destination for flight schools, because I've read they've currently got 9 of them down there. And even a seaplane base somewhere right along here. And you can even see one of the seaplanes parked down there in the satellite image, but unfortunately you cannot select it in the sim. But if you need a seaplane base for some reason, there's another one right by downtown that you can select. I'll show you where that is when we're done, in case you need it for one of your flight plan apps or something. Yeah, but I definitely can't complain about the ground texturing out here, because it does look really good. And all these things in the middle of the river right here, which you could not see if we didn't have the RKBRIDGER pack, are bundles of logs from the forestry industry around here. They float them down the Fraser River and then bring them to some of the processing plants that we'll see in a little bit. But I'm guessing they just kind of bundle them up and then push them down here with tugboats. Looks like someone's doing a little four-wheeling down there, which is exactly what I'd do if I had that kind of land. A lot of fun. I think this bridge here is called the Port Mann Bridge. And all of these just look so good now. This one might have looked okay too, but some of the ones downtown really didn't look great in the sim. Alright, as we get over downtown, you're going to see a little bit of freezing and stuttering, and there's nothing we can do about that. I've already got the graphics turned down pretty low. That doesn't look quite right, does it? But it definitely looks better out here. Quite a while ago, I flew out here probably back in the summertime, May, and it just looks so bad. I haven't mentioned in one of the videos that I said we're going to have to wait till someone touches it up down there because it just doesn't look good enough to do a flight over, but it looks better now, so I don't know if they did a world update since then or something, but it definitely looks a lot better. And they have tons of train yards out here as well. And we just flew over it, but I'll show you where that is on the satellite map too. Something called the Pitt River, which kind of split off to the north. And that flows into Pitt Lake a few miles upstream. Can we see that? That's probably it up there. And that lake is quite an interesting specimen as far as lakes go. It's one of the few tidal lakes in the world, and one of the largest, with a surface level swing of up to 15 feet between cycles. So depending on when you look at it, it may look like a gigantic lake or a river. And I'll show you that at the end too. It's a lake in the image, but you can see where the river runs just under the surface. So we're going to keep following the Fraser River here for a little while. And you'll notice the transition into a much more industrial shoreline as we go along. Look at all these logs in here. There was actually some complaints I read that people were accusing the logging companies of intentionally trying to block up the river with them. Why they would do that, I'm not sure. But apparently there's been a little bit of friction about that. Look at the detailing of all these buildings. And even the little stuff has relief. I love that. Just love it. What's this, a big barge or something down here? We'll take a look at it out the side window. Oh, it's a collection of barges. And though this river ends here in Vancouver, this thing starts 854 miles away up in the Canadian Rockies and was named after Simon Fraser, who was the first to fully explore it in 1808. And the first Europeans to see any part of this river that we know about was a group of Spanish explorers in 1792, but I think they were just kind of passing by. This is the Strait of Georgia out here where it all dumps into, which we can't see because we're sitting so high in the plane. Yeah, that's it down there. And then Victoria, which is the current capital of BC, is somewhere out in that direction. We'll probably check that out at some point too, because it probably looks pretty cool. So this area here is called New Westminster, founded in 1858, and this was the first capital, the first British capital out in these parts, before they moved everything over to Victoria. But that area was a big landing spot for prospectors during the Fraser Gold Rush, which started out in the 1850s, so they'd come ashore there and then head up into the mountains, searching for their fortunes, which I'm sure, like most prospectors, none of them ever found. And I should also add that despite the river splitting in all these different directions here, all of them are still called the Fraser River, just in case you're curious. I'm sure you were. But HBC was a big deal out here. They're pretty much the reason why this town exists, and they had a lot of static with a competing company out here, which I think was based in Montreal, called the Northwest Company. And it became so heated that it kicked off the Pemmican Wars from 1812 to 1821, as these guys were battling for control of the trade routes. And the only thing I knew about the word pemmican before I saw that is I used to buy this beef jerky that was called pemmican something or other, so I thought it was a type of beef jerky, but of course I had to make sure that I knew exactly what pemmican was. And it turns out it's something far more disgusting than that. It's made from dry buffalo meat that's pulverized into a powder, and then they mix it with lard in these big leather bags that weigh up to 100 pounds each. And I saw a modern picture of pemmican. I'm guessing that they used it for survival, probably, in the cold weather if they were traveling, because it looks nasty, but apparently it's extremely calorically dense, so I guess it would be good survival food if that's what you're using it for. But it looked pretty gross. Yeah, we're getting a little bit of frame rate issues out here, but that's fine. Look at all these houses down here. It just looks great. I love when neighborhoods look that realistic, and all of these do. And as you can see, as we kind of survey the cityscape here, they've got lots of different areas with pockets of high-rises all over the place. Not like Jacksonville, where we just have our one core downtown area. All those fields look fantastic. Look at all these logs down here. I mean, I could see why they'd be concerned about them jamming up the river. So look at that. And I was trying to find the spot where they pulled them down from, like a big cleared-out forestry area. I followed the river back a ways, and I found a few bare patches, but it didn't look like there was any massive logging operations, so I don't know how far they're bringing these things down. And they keep them in the water, not because it would cost a lot of money to keep them on land, which I'm sure it probably would, but keeping them in the water keeps them from splitting and getting discolored and keeps bugs and fungus and stuff from growing in there. So they just leave them in the water until they're ready to process them. And they process them at a couple different places up here. You'll see their big sawdust piles. There's one here, and then there's another one here on the other side of the river. And this thing right here, this little island that we'll see in a second, is called Mitchell Island. And it's probably not the best place for a nature walk, because that whole thing is industrial. In fact, a good chunk of it is car wreckers, which must make the people back there on Barnston Island super jealous. Come up here and do some broken down car trading. And because we're in the northern latitudes and it is the winter months, the sun doesn't get much higher than this in the sky. I've got the time of day set probably around 9:45 a.m. If it got much higher than that in the sky, the glare from the sun off these rivers was so bad that we really couldn't see much going on the shoreline. Alright, we're going to head north for a few miles, and you're going to see a couple of the mini high-rise areas in the city. And Mike, you're going to have to help me out with this. I think the one further to the south, which is going to be off to our right in just a second, is called Metrotown in Maywood. And the spot that's going to be directly off our nose, I think, is called Brentwood, maybe. I didn't see a place name directly on top of that one, but Brentwood was right next to it. And we're going to fly over a big green space here in a minute, which is the city's Central Park, which might be this out here. Yeah, you can tell if I turn my head too fast, we're just running into some of this. So this is the one that Brentwood was just over to this side of this area right here. So I don't know what that specific area here, and then this was Metrotown over here. And when we fly by this one, this is the part that didn't get touched up. So when we get real close, you'll see the buildings look a little bit funny. Not nearly as good as the look over the SAMSCENE touched up areas. But this is a big place, a really big place. Well, that's a pretty big open expanse. I wonder if they're doing any logging up there. Alright, so we're going to turn back to the north here and cross over Vancouver Harbor. And on this side of it, we'll see an area called Hastings Park, which has a huge horse track, of course. And right next to that will be the Pacific Coliseum. And that place has been used for just about anything you might want to do in an arena, including some of the events of the 2010 Winter Olympics. And just on the other side of these soccer pitches that we're going to see in just a second, there is an amusement park, the only one in town, called Playland. So we'll see if we can... There's the soccer pitches, so the Playland's going to be right over here. And there's the arena over there. We'll see if we can see any details of this amusement park as we come around. It would be a rare treat if we could. There's the horse track. Well, look at that. You can. Look at that. So here's Playland right here. And all throughout the town, they've got these things called spray parks, which I guess are just little misting areas, maybe, where the kids can run around in their trunks and freeze to death. That is an extreme amount of detail, actually. Look at that. Wow. That looks unbelievably good. Well, that's cool. And they got a lot of these big... I think these are all big public swimming pools. We'll see several of those down along the shoreline. I'm guessing it's probably because the seawater is freezing up here. Look at these bridges. Man, those frame rates. Ugh. The port looks incredible. All the ships down there look good. That bridge looks amazing, of course. Alright, we're about to cross over the Capilano River right here, which runs up this way, and there was an in-sim point of interest, a suspension bridge of some kind, which I flew out that way before to go over a big lake up there. They've got a dam called the Cleveland Dam up there, which actually looks really good if you fly out there to look at it. But when I was in the Caribou before, I got stuck, and I don't want to try flying out there again, because I might get stuck again. But the dam looks cool. If you just fly right up that valley right there, you can see it. They got a big spillway and everything. But I could not see that suspension bridge. Look at all this stuff. Just looks great. They got the big ships down there. Fantastic. And there's something up here. I think this is going to be right here. It's called the Big Sulfur Pile. The Big Yellow Sulfur Pile. It's really called that. The Google place name had a marker on there that just said Big Yellow Sulfur Pile. So they got that. I wonder if it smells like sulfur. Down here where I live in Florida, we have some extremely hard water, and when they pump it up out of the ground, it also is very rotten egg smelling, so they have to aerate it all as soon as it comes out. So they have these big, giant bubbler tanks where they try to get all the sulfur smell out before they pump it into your house. And you'd better have a water softener if you want to live around here. Otherwise, all your fixtures will be cement in a few months. There's the Big Yellow Sulfur Pile. Yeah, I can't take any points off for the detailing along the shorelines here. This looks great. All the neighborhoods look really, really great. Only detractor, probably some slightly off-colored trees, and then the performance issues, which are just, there's no way to get around that. Alright, this other big bridge up here does look great in the sim, so this is one of the in-sim mods. This one that's going to run down here, we're going to get a nice look at that. That's called the Lion's Gate, also named after a set of mountains to the north. And this beauty was opened up in 1938. And one interesting footnote about this bridge is that part of the stipulations of approval to build it would be that only local materials and workers could be used, and all that was a part of softening the local blow of the Great Depression. But there was a mandate in the fine print that no Asiatic persons shall be employed for any part of the undertaking. So I couldn't figure out what that was all about, but there's always got to be a scapegoat for society's woes, so I imagine that probably had something to do with it. Lots of warehouses out here. We're going to get a nice look at this bridge here in a second. Come on, come into view. Look at that thing. And I read they have a couple of giant cast lions on each end of the ramps going up to it here, but I couldn't spot anything like that from the sim. So out on this big peninsula right here, this green area is called Stanley Park, and over here is their aquarium, which is really big, but we're not going to get close enough to take a good look at it. Really big. I'll show you that on the satellite map at the end too. But they got trails and all kinds of beaches and picnic areas down in here. Looks very nice. And right across this other shoreline up here, we're going to fly over the town of Kitsilano, known by the locals as Kits. And down to our left, which is going to be right over here, is Kits Beach, which I read is like the Venice Beach of Vancouver. The big difference being 350 less days of weather that's warm enough to enjoy it, probably. But they have these big pools here. There's one over here, too. Let's see if we can spot the one. Look at that. There's this huge pool here, and then they've got one over here on this side. There it is right there. So we're going to take a lap around here and come over the touched up part of downtown, which you can already tell looks significantly better because all the really cool stuff is over there. And this thing right here running inland here, it's not a river, it doesn't connect to anything. It's called False Creek, and that little building right here is the Museum of Vancouver, showcasing the history of the area. There's Kits Beach. I don't see any skaters or bodybuilders down there though. Probably not the right time of year for that. And though you can't really tell it's an island, this little lump here in the middle of the creek is called Granville Island. And interestingly, Vancouver was originally called Granville before it was renamed in 1886. And what is today Granville Island used to be a little sandbar that was once in a much, much wider creek, but all the silt and stuff getting built up in there, and I'm sure just urban sprawl, they've narrowed that quite a bit. And they must have a lot of cool stuff going on down here, so here's the island right here. Because whenever I go to a new city, I always look at the top 10 or top 20 things to do, and Granville Island was a must-see spot if you're visiting the area. So I think they have all kinds of little shops and restaurants down there. Alright, as we turn east and then north again up here, we're going to see if we can make out the Van Dusen Botanical Garden, but it's really hard to separate it from the rest of the scenery. So I don't know if we'll be able to spot it or not. But that place opened in 1975. And it looks beautiful from the ground if you want to check out some pics on the ground. And they built it on top of an old golf course. Just trying to see, it might be this area here. It's just really hard to pick out. But just east of that, which we will see in just a second, is Queen Elizabeth Park. And they've got a lot of gardens down there too, with the Blodell Conservatory in the middle of it. It's a big dome-shaped greenhouse. And I think we'll be able to spot that one as soon as we lift this wing here. Alright, so I'm guessing that's probably the botanical garden there. And let's see if we can spot Queen Elizabeth Park. It's got to be somewhere out here, yeah, because they got a bunch of stadiums. I don't see the big greenhouse, though. And one of their sports facilities, among many, is the stadium of the Vancouver Canadians, which is a minor league baseball affiliate of the Blue Jays. We'll see that here in just a second. And maybe we'll get to see that greenhouse once we come around. Alright, so there's the baseball park. There it is right there. See it? And they got all kinds of little gardens and stuff. They got like a big rose garden and some other gardens out here. There's a conservatory. There's the Canadian Stadium, which looks fantastic. Alright, here comes the heart of the city up ahead, and we're going to see a lot, so I'm going to tell you guys what's on tap. The biggest thing is BC Place, which is home to, among other things, the BC Lions, which is the local Canadian football team, and that's American-style football, I should probably add. And since that's impossible to miss, I'll use it as the navigational beacon for some of the other stuff. But the roof of this place, and it's gigantic, is retractable, and I've never seen anything like it because I couldn't tell how they retracted it. Oh, that Doggone pillars in the way. Here it is right there. You see that? But the way they do it is they pull this center ring of it down into the center of it, like curtains. So they all just kind of pull back into the center part of it there, which is pretty neat. I'm going to check out a video of that online if you haven't seen something like that before. And this thing that looks like the big Epcot ball right here is part of the Science World Interactive Museum. And right next to the BC place here, which looks small by comparison, is Rogers Arena. And that's where the Canucks hockey team plays. And this gigantic white thing sticking out over here is called Canada Place, and that is their convention center. And if you're wondering why we haven't seen one of those yet, there it is. And that's also where the cruise ship terminal is. So they pull those in there. I'm surprised they didn't stick one of those in the sim for us. And in just a second, when it pops back into view, you'll see the Vancouver Lookout, which sits on top of an office building called the Harbor Center. And I read that that thing's tall enough that you can get an unobstructed view of the whole city because it's taller than any of the local buildings. That looks phenomenal. Look at that place. And look at these train yards. That looks great. So there's the Vancouver Lookout right up there. And you better believe they've got a rotating restaurant there. Ooh, and look at that thing. Looks like a big Van de Graaff generator. I didn't get to see what that was. Look at this. They got some gardens on top of the buildings. Yeah, this looks 1,000,000 times better than it did without that SAMSCENE pack. So that looks really, really good. Look at this thing here. Man, you just can't tell when you're looking right down on top of it what would look cool. This building is awesome. Looks like they even got grass on top of that place. No sunken boats in the harbor. This is beautiful out here. Really, really nice. And without the whole city spread before us, even the performance is getting a little better. Yeah, that looks really good. There's Kitt's Beach again. And a big swimming pool. Alright, we're getting ready to set up for our approach into Vancouver International here in a minute. And we've still got to check out the UBC campus, which is going to be up on this other peninsula up here. But I'm going to tell you about a few famous people from Vancouver while we head over there. And there's no shortage of them. And I'm just going to list a few of their many actors, because we won't have time for anything else. They pumped out from Vancouver Pamela Anderson for the guys, Ryan Reynolds for the girls, Michael J. Fox for everybody, and Jason Priestley, you may remember him from 90210, Seth Rogen, and Hayden Christensen, who played Anakin Skywalker, and Finn Wolfhard. And that's the kid that played Mike in Stranger Things, which I'm guessing at this point everyone on Earth has probably seen that. And I'm adding this last one for the less than 1% of our members who are female. John and Drew Scott of the Property Brothers are also Canucks. And I only recognize those guys because my wife used to watch that show religiously. And I imagine all those home improvement shows are going to meet the same fate that they did in 2008 after that last housing crash. Once this baby starts unraveling, then that'll be into that again for another 10 years or so. And on that note, I've finally reached the age where I'm constantly shocked to find that everyone is younger than me. Some of you guys older than me know exactly what I'm talking about. Our governor, old-looking actors, head football coaches. So far I'm not struggling with a president, but we'll see how this next election goes, assuming the country doesn't cannibalize itself by then. I might just move up here until that's done with. Uh-oh, hard freeze. Alright, so all of this stuff out here is the University of British Columbia campus, and as you can see, it is huge. They've got over 72,000 students enrolled down there, which beats out all but Texas A&M as far as U.S. schools go. That is a big campus. And it opened in 1908, making it the oldest in British Columbia, and is currently home to the world's largest cyclotron, which is a type of particle accelerator. And 3 Canadian prime ministers are products of UBC, including the current one, who I understand is about as popular as our dear leader up here. And look, a whole bunch of more logs waiting out here to be turned into pulp. And somewhere along here, they've got a big museum, but it didn't look all that spectacular. This might be it right down here, but there were POI markers in the sim for it. I think that's it right there. It's a big anthropology museum. But this campus is just huge. Alright, so we're coming into runway 13 up here at Vancouver International. They're one cockeyed strip, and the shortest at about 7,500 feet. And the other 2 are huge if for some reason you need something bigger. And of course there's plenty of Payware mods available for this place. But if you want to get a really good looking Freeware mod, and they even did some of the inside of the terminal buildings, you can include that one I've got linked in the video description. Okay, so I'm going to come on down to 1,500 feet. Start slowing down. Heck, I'll just take the autopilot off at this point. Good grief, that's loud. Alright, we turn the autopilot off. Alright, we'll go ahead and give it full mixture. Boy, that's a nice little scene there with the sun in it. Very nice. So once we get down, as always, we'll pull over a little NavMap and look at everything from the satellite view so you can get a lay of the land. But if you're the type who prefers jumping off to any of our other spectacular flights once we get on the ground, I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of you guys for being a part of this channel and welcome our newest subscribers. We've picked up like 100 subscribers in the last 24 hours. I don't know what the heck happened, but I've been blessed by the algo god for some reason. Alright, let's keep slowing down. I need to get some flaps out. But as I've said many times, guys, I don't do this for the money. I make absolutely nothing for this, and I've spent so much on the hobby that I doubt I'll ever get in the black. And if YouTube does decide to send a few pennies my way, you better believe I'll be dumping it all into what I'm already dumping it into, so we can all enjoy it together. Thankfully, I've got a day job that pays the bills, so I can just burn money on this. Luckily, my wife never watches these, so she won't ever hear me say that. Alright, one notch of flaps. And we're a little high, so we'll keep coming down. Yeah, so I do all this stuff for the community. I really mean that. Simmers are a very unique group of people, and we're all unique in a fundamental kind of way. So drop me a line in the comments. If you look down through our threads, you can see I respond to every single one of them, and I'll keep doing that for as long as I have the bandwidth to do it. And if you like what we're doing here, let me know. It's the only motivation I need to keep pumping out content like this. Just tell me you're having a good time. That's all I need to hear. Boy, I feel like we're going a heck of a lot slower than we are. What do we have, a big headwind? No, we just got a 4-knot crosswind. I'll throw another notch of flaps out. And you know what else is incredible? We've had no trolls. Not one troll. I moderate all the comments just in case somebody feels like being a jerk, but we've had none of that, which is astonishing in this day and age. Actually, I take that back. In one of our very, very first flights, some guy put some comment like, "This is the most boring thing I've ever seen on the internet." And I think I said something like, I think he may have misspelled Call of Duty in the search bar, and then he deleted the comment. But that was the only one, which is really just incredible. Alright, coming on down. So it looks like we have plenty of taxiway options, so I'll just get off the runway and then we'll pull over a little NavMap. And if you're worrying about being trolled, don't, because I moderate everything. If anyone's going to put something stupid up there, I will enjoy it for my own entertainment value and then delete it and then block them. I want to keep this place fun for everybody. And after our last flight in that F-35, you know, I kept calling that little thing on the heads-up display that shows you where your plane's going to hit the ground or wherever it's kind of pointing to. I kept calling it the bullseye. And like 4 people said, that's not called a bullseye, it's called a velocity vector indicator, which is just awesome. Man, I'm not at, I was at the right approach speed. I'm surprised we're getting so much hopping. Okay, alright, just get down. It's still getting up in the air. Come on down again. Well, that's what you get for a Coronado plane. Well, maybe it's accurate. Alright, let's see what we got over here. Velocity vector indicator. That's about the most awesome term for anything I've ever heard. But now I know. There's got to be some sort of shorter acronym for that. Maybe the VIVI? Those flyboys always have some cool acronyms. Okay. Yeah, we'll just stop up here. I'll pull on the grass in case somebody needs to use the taxiway. But I don't know where the GA parking is, so we're just going to cruise over here. Alright, flaps up so a stiff breeze doesn't launch me into the air again. Alright, parking brake on. And we'll just go ahead and shut everything off. Alright, here comes a little NavMap. If I can grab it. Alright, so here's where we are in the world. Here's where the US starts down here, and here's where Victoria is down here. And again, that does look pretty cool, so maybe we'll take a flight over there because I bet this landscape looks amazing. So this is where the capital of BC is now. But here's where we left from, down along the Fraser River, which runs this way, and then up here, and then goes way, way up into the mountains. And here's Fort Langley. So we came up from here, and there's the town of Fort Langley. And again, I think this town down here, maybe, yeah, Langley Airport. So this is also called Langley. Langley everything. All thanks to the HBC. Came down the Fraser a little bit here, saw the Golden Ears Bridge, and then here is that first island that we saw, McMillan Island, which has a little Indian reservation on it. But check this place out. Here's Barnston, and look at all these yards around here. Every one of them is just filled. Well, that was not too bad. Look at these. Look at that. Look at all that junk they got in there. But when you have to take a ferry to come out here, and when the Homeowners Association has to get here by ferry, look at all these logs. Look at that yard. Good grief. But who cares? You're on literally your own island. No one's going to bother you. So there's PittMeadows Airport, formerly the largest airport in all of Canada. That's crazy, because there's not much built up around there. You'd think it would have been. That was 1970s. That was the most busy airport in all of Canada. So here's the Pitt River coming up here. And check this thing out. This is Pitt Lake, which is either a lake like it is here, but you can tell when the water level drops. Look at that. You can see where the river would run. That has got to be a sight to behold. And it looks like all this stuff probably floods here, because that's kind of semi-underwater. But that is pretty neat. I didn't know that tidal lakes got that big. But apparently they do. There's the Port Mann Bridge and a whole bunch more logs. And then here's New Westminster down here, which is where they were dropping off the Fraser Gold Rush miners. And man, I got to tell you, that shoreline, all that industrial stuff looked really, really good. It's just too bad we were having the performance issues, but I guess I kind of understand it because there's so much going on, especially with all those skyscrapers. And if you want to check it out, there's another little university up here, and this place is called, oh man, what is it called? I forgot to put a bookmark on it. Something of the Gods. And I didn't get any details about it because we weren't flying up there, but you might want to go check that out, see what it's all about. Looks like they almost have like a Parthenon or something up there. I don't know what that is, but check it out if you'd like to go up that way. And we came down here where they're processing all the pulp, and I even put wood processing up here. So there's one spot there, and there's another one here, and look at all these logs all over the place. Just get them tied up, shipping them up there, cut them up. Okay, so we came out this way, and this is, I think Brentwood was this area out here, or Brent something or other, and this is Metrotown, or Maywood. One of those two things. And then here's where we got to see Playland. Man, that might have been the star of the show for me. That was such a neat surprise. Look at that. I mean, it looked just like that. You could even see this roller coaster over here. You never see that in the sim unless you have a specific add-on for it. And I'm going to bet that probably wasn't part of the SAMSCENE pack because they usually don't do amusement parks. But there's their big race course. There's the Pacific Coliseum. Came across Vancouver Harbor here. And let me show you that dam while we're up here. So, nope, we're not there yet. It's up here. Here's where the dam is. So there's the Cleveland Dam. And it does look good. It looks way better than that in the sim. So if you want to fly up there and check it out, you can just get something that can take a tight turn, because if you're going this way, you're going to get stuck in here if you need to take a big turn. And there's where the suspension bridge is, which you can see here on this map, but I could not spot it in the sim. And it was a POI in the sim, so I don't know what was going on with that. Vancouver Shipyards, big yellow sulfur pile, and there's the Lionsgate Bridge. No Asians need apply. What a weird thing that was. I'd love to find out why they didn't let any Asians participate in that project. Here's Stanley Park, and here's the aquarium. Look how big this place is. That is huge for an aquarium. We've flown over a lot of aquariums, and that one is really, really big. Wonder what they got down there. I wonder if they have any whales. But they got some belugas. And this thing's called the Lost Lagoon, and before they built this little causeway here, it used to be just a big tidal marsh that would come in here, and a bunch of Native Americans used to fish and stuff in there, collect crustaceans, but now it is a enclosed lagoon since they built that causeway. And then here's their big pool, one of their big pools, public pools. And where was that other one back here? Well, while we're here, let's look at Canadian Place. That thing looked amazing in the sim. And there's the Vancouver Lookout. And here is the seaplane strip if you need one. That's the only one in the area that you can select in the sim. And then we had the BC place. So the way that this worked is, this little ring here is what actually opens up. And when they retract it, these things, they're very, very loose, much like a fabric curtain. They pull in here and just go right into the center of it. There's Rogers Arena where the Canucks play. And I put a bookmark here, but you couldn't really see it in the sim because look at this, is their public library. And you can tell by how big the shadow is. It's almost like a coliseum that they've got built around there. But I really couldn't spot it in the sim. But if you want to, I bet you probably could if you flew down there a little closer to it. And here's Science World, which looked amazing in the sim as well. Very, very cool. They did a great job with that too. And here's Granville, where you have to stop if you're coming through town, which used to be completely an island and completely a sandbar. And apparently they had like a little rickety bridge that went across it. And you can tell just kind of from the edge of this here that I bet all this stuff, because they said this was much, much bigger. False Creek, back before they started building everything up over there. So here's the Museum of Vancouver, which we saw and looked amazing. Here's Kitts Beach, the Venice Beach of Vancouver, another big public swimming pool. Any skaters down there? Looks like there might be some people on the beach. A few cars down there. And what else we got on here? Oh, so here's where the botanical garden was. And you know what? I think they just put too many trees in it. It was just too dense to really see anything. But they got some cool looking buildings down there. I don't think we'd be able to spot any because the trees were just too dense. But we could see this. That's where their little greenhouse is. And their gardens, we saw those. They all looked great. And here's where the Canadians play. I wonder if they say Canadians. But that's the minor league team for the Blue Jays there. And then we came over here to UBC. Look how gigantic this is. And I looked for like a big circle on the ground because some of those particle accelerators, you can actually see the big circle on the ground. So it must not be one of those type of particle accelerators because it was contained, at least the marker for it was in their physics building, which I think was this right here. And here's their Museum of Anthropology, which, I mean, I guess it kind of looked like that, but they made a point to make it a landmark in the sim. Look at all these logs. Good grief. I mean, you'd think they'd kind of slow down the cutting just a little bit, because, I mean, how long do you think it takes to process that stuff? And then to go all the way out here and haul it back to the places where they're cutting it up? That's insane. Then we came in for our approach. So you can see they got two much bigger runways if you need them for some reason, but this one just happened to be pointing in the right direction, so that's what we came into. So Mike Coffey, again, thanks for being a member. Thanks for living in Vancouver. Hope you guys enjoyed that flight. Got a few short hops coming up for us, some other really cool stuff to check out. I think I might just check out another gigantic volcano that I found, and those are always fun. So we'll see what we got in the hopper. I've got to go down to, believe it or not, Orlando again for soccer this weekend. So if you want to watch our Are We There Yet video, you know exactly what I'll be doing. That was our Orlando tour. So I'll be traveling down I-4, hanging out at, in fact, I think we're going to that Disney Sports Complex, as a matter of fact. So you can wave to me as you're flying over. Had an absolute blast as always, guys. Can't wait to see you all again in the skies. Later.